Common Purpose is a live stream podcast featuring Tim Kelly, a Chattanooga-based businessman and mayoral candidate who loves this city and has made his life here. Beyond the conversation, Common Purpose is a show about elevating the bonds that unite us as a community and resisting the forces that would tear us apart.
Okay. Well, welcome to Common Purpose, a podcast about elevating the bonds that unite us in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm Tim Kelly, and today's topic is one that is critically important to me because I think it is at the core of what makes a great community and the most important thing we could do to ensure a great future for our community, and that is education. And so I'm blessed to have with me today, really lucky, two of our best educators locally and nationally, Dr. Bryan Johnson and Dr. Elaine Swafford. So thank you all for coming. Very much appreciate it. Dr. Johnson is superintendent of our Hamilton County Schools, and Dr. Swafford is the CEO of the Chattanooga Girls Leadership Academy, the Montessori Elementary at Highland Park, and the Young Women's Leadership Academy Foundation. I think I got all that right. So my role today is really just to listen and to learn. I'm here to talk as little as possible, which is difficult for me at times. And I just want to ask these wonderful folks some key questions that hopefully will sort of advance the conversation about, what a cornerstone education is and how important it is to the long-term success of the Chattanooga area. So starting out with the easy ones, I just want to ask to help the viewers and listeners get to know you a little bit better. You've both chosen to commit your lives to education. So starting with ladies first with Dr. Swafford, maybe just walk me through the educational path that led you here, Elaine.
So thank you for having me. I have been in education probably, I'll date myself a little bit, about 38 years. And have actually had time both in public schools, K through 12, area superintendent, vice president at the community college. And so I have been in education a long time, but I'll tell you this last 9 years at Chattanooga Girls Leadership Academy, I was probably minding my own business one day when Dr. Wells, who founded the school, needed some help, and simply felt called to go and assist with this girls' school and turn it around. Try some reform efforts. It happened to work, and so that that's kind of what led me down this path of and getting to know this great superintendent here, and being able to work alongside him some as well, and so. It's education is so important, and whether it's been K through 12 or whether it's been in higher education, for me, I've always had a propensity to work with the disadvantaged, underserved students, and that's what I intend to do for the rest of my time in education. But that's how I've gotten here.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Bryan. How about you?
Yeah, so I think similar to Elaine, I can't say I've got 38 years in the business, but
did you start when you were 8, Elaine? I'm just curious.
That's it.
But definitely started in the classroom and had an opportunity to much like Elaine's story, work with at-risk students, and absolutely fell in love with working with children, and thought my career path was taking me in a different direction, but again, when I got to get in the classroom with children, I realized I was working in what I was called to do. And so spent time in the classroom, a building administrator, and the director of high schools, and chief academic officer, all here in the state of Tennessee, and got the privilege to come to Hamilton County now a little over 3 years ago, and obviously met Elaine and so many other community members that really valued public education and really valued making sure that our children are positioned for success, and been very fortunate to be a part of a great team and work for a great school board in this wonderful community. So pleased to be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you for coming. Well, in any particular order, This is kind of a very broad softball question, but what do y'all feel like the purpose of school is? I mean, what is education for, really, at the end of the day? I mean, I know that's distressingly broad, but
Well,
you
at
could
the
take
end
it.
of the day, and for me, have I prepared students first of all to walk across that stage, at the end of that 12th grade year, to have a choice. For me, whether that student, at CGLA, for instance, every kid takes the ACT. Even the ones who think they won't do well. We just had a kid the other day said, I went from 15 to a 19 just by pushing her, right? But the point is, my job is to give them a choice when they leave me to either, enter a 4-year school, 2-year school, a vocational program, go into the service, but to make sure that they've been given a choice and can be productive citizens.
It's a great answer. That's all about options at the end of the day, or lack thereof. How about you, Dr.?
I don't know I can add much to it.
Yeah.
For us, it's very similar in regards to positioning students to have choices and options, and making sure that we're doing all we can to expose students really deeply. Exposure's been important for and to us, no matter whether you're at the highest performing level or somewhere in between, or have had academic challenges. We want to make sure you have those exposures and opportunities, because so many times you find in students that, in particular students that are at risk, it's because they have not been exposed. They haven't performed to the level, and finding their passion and getting them hooked into their passion, and again, those exposures to different career options and such. Really position students to do that. So had a chance this morning to visit Howard School and Howard Connect, and they're doing some neat things in the music industry and producing music and different things, and just talking about the level of engagement and how that has opened up the door for so many students to engage in reading and doing things in a different way. So we desire to continue to take that approach and make sure that students know what all the options are.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, getting into the details a little bit more, locally, specifically, I mean, you guys have been involved in the, in the fight, which is a fight here a lot of times to get us and keep us on the right track. Kind of up to date, what do you think we're doing well? What do you think could be doing better? And where do you still see our greatest opportunities? I think I know part of that answer, but take it any angle you want it from.
Well, I'll jump in. I think one of the things that's really special about Hamilton County, Chattanooga, is the fact that there are so many different groups and entities that are supportive of public education, whether it's our foundations here locally or business and industry. We found an immense amount of support in really ensuring that our public schools are as successful as possible. And so I think that's something that we really do well. When we find or identify something like, for instance, COVID-19 presented a challenge in regards to Wi-Fi access and broadband connection, and within a couple of months, we were able to raise the funds and bring the partners together to figure out how we're going to fund it for the long term for students. And so that's something that I think is, again, I always hear it called the Chattanooga way, but that collaboration that comes together is really a positive. And I think it's something that we've got to continue to improve. It's the continued investment in public education. And so, as much as that's a positive, there's also an area that we know we have to continue to invest and improve if we're going to have a world-class public education system here. And so that's a heavy lift, obviously in the midst of what we're dealing with the pandemic, but whether it's facilities or literacy programming or personnel support at the building level, we've got to continue to make those investments to position our schools and students to be successful.
And I'll tell you, I follow up just a little bit. I think that
Follow up a lot.
In the system, I think Dr. Johnson's also brought a level of, I'll call it differentiation for different students. And so, he's brought in the Future Ready Institutes, and, kids aren't tracked into one area, but they have choices, as we talked about earlier. And I think that, that's huge for our kids across our system.
Yeah.
You know, as we well know, we've got work to do on, you know, even our pre-K and kindergarten, and you know, making sure that they're ready to go to that first grade and be successful in early education. But on the other end of that, I think that we've really done some good work in providing students different arenas of choice.
No doubt. And that's, you know, I mean, going back to the Chattanooga 2.0 sort of blueprint, it's somewhat gratifying to look back and see this stuff. I mean, first of all, it's so broad, right? Trying to get our arms from early childhood education all the way to post-secondary. And it's a big game of whack-a-mole, or, you know, rolling a rock up the hill or whatever. But we're making some significant progress. And I can tell you from my you know, latest project, being out talking to a bunch of people are particularly excited about Future Ready Institutes and what that might present. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about, specifically for people that might not be as familiar, as A, what they are, and B, what those specialties are at which schools.
Yeah. So you know, we want students. We talked about opportunities. You know, the reality of us, we want students to be positioned for a career. You know, and again, I'll point to the fact that here there was a lot of receptivity to the work, and much as you mentioned, Tim, I know you were engaged with it as well and have been throughout. You know, the work of 2.0 and so many of the other, whether it's PEF or Ben Wood and other foundations, really plugging into public education. We saw a desire to really go after post-secondary preparedness. And so we began to have a conversation about what does that look like for students? How do we use the career interest to make sure that students understand the connection with the core content area? I was in a classroom today, and it was a welding class, and the assistant principal was telling me, she was pointing at a particular student, and she said, that young man right there, she said, you know, we've had behavior challenges with him off and on his whole time here, but since he's been in welding, it's like a completely different kid. And sometimes it's that specific thing that turns that light bulb. So really, I thought with Future Ready Institutes is to take the career thing and use it as the center, the focus for the child, and to plug the math, English, science, and social studies in through the lens of those courses, and take a problem-based approach where there's real-world problems that they're working to solve. And Blake Freeman and that team have done really a great job. But whether it's been Blue Cross or Unum or, you know, or other EPB partners that have come alongside, they've seen the connection to their career fields and made investments to really help us accelerate the work and move it forward. And so it's really exciting to see what happened. I think when we first began to really think about Future Ready Institutes, you know, we thought, you know, we'll have 4, 6, maybe 8. And really, we're in a situation now where every high school has at least one, and most of them have 2 or 3.
That's outstanding.
Within their buildings, and have great partnerships that I don't even know about. Sometimes I get told on the back end that, you know, I was at Tyner the other day, and the Blue Cares team had come in and redone a sports medicine room for the students so that they could have a first-class experience and preparation for, you know, a potential career. So really excited about what's going on there.
It's all outstanding. And Elaine, on the other end of the spectrum, I've been talking a lot about early childhood education. You know, to me, I tell the story all the time. I went through business school late in life, and I had a professor who was a psychiatrist. He had an appointment at the medical school teaching that, and in the business school in organizational management. He gave this incredible lecture about human development. Really, it was the idea was HR, but the punchline was kind of that by the time a child is 6 years old, 90% of the brain's plasticity the bread is baked for the most part. And it hit me right then. It's like, if we can't get early childhood right, then this poor guy's job is almost impossible, you know, for the most part. So I'm particularly excited about the Montessori project you got going on. You want to, you know, talk a little bit about that, and then about the Montessori method in particular and why you might have chosen that.
Sure. So, you know, at CGLA, we're 6 through 12, STEM, all-girls school. But you look at, in the 6th grade, I've been there going on my 9th year now. And every year, somewhere between 75 and 80% of those 6th graders are 2 or more grade levels behind in reading and or math. And that's just not at CGLA, right? I'm talking, that's just a subset out of the system. And, you after years, you think you've got to have some other effect and build some density around what you've already established. And so, to be quite honest, I had the opportunity to visit the Montessori school here and took some other trips. But what convinced me is have a little guy that's like my grandson. And at the age of 5 years old, I was riding down the road one day, and he went, "That word up there is confidence." And I went, "Oh." And so I started looking at the way Mrs. Montessori taught reading. And to be quite honest, it's been that way for the last over 100 years, right? And the groundwork that was built under those children, she was given the children who weren't supposed to be able to learn as quickly or as much. And as it turned out, when they were assessed, her children were just as outperformed. And so I think that Montessori has a place, particularly for the population that we have chosen to serve as CGLA and Wildlife, and that's, again, those children who, at the age of 2 or 3, 4, may not be given that background to learn their letters and their numbers and just the basics, so that when they enter kindergarten even, it's not impossible that when they enter kindergarten, first grade, they should be reading. And so that's really the simple truth to why we're starting the Montessori school, because I've seen it work, and I've seen it work both private and public.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if the key metric, doing 2.0 work, I remember sort of one of the key metrics was, can we get kids to, third grade reading level by third grade as a future predictor. And boy, sure would seem like that'd be a whole lot easier if they, are queued up coming in.
Well, and here's the thing, I have to say that it doesn't matter whether they're in Montessori or CGLA or the county. I think the superintendent would agree. He just wants kids in Hamilton County.
Right.
Because who knows where they're going when they leave us. We just want kids to be able to read, write, think, and put their, be able to share their thought process.
Okay. I love it. All right, well, here's a little hot topic for you. Play it however you will. But, we know that the city technically got out of the school business all those years ago, for better or for worse. What role do you think the city can play in helping ensure a great education for area students? Because there's nothing, I'm not going to put a lot of embellishment on it, but there is no single thing as important to the future of the city. So, we've talked a lot about how could the city be more concerned, but I'm curious what you think, what the city, if you think the city could be doing anything more, short of going back into the school business.
Well, I don't know what the superintendents think, but
you can just dodge it completely if you need to.
I'll just say from a standpoint that, if you have, some people say, well, more money and more resources don't help. But if you use it the correct way, it does.
Right.
And so for me, I don't know what that would look like, but I do know that you can't, I don't think there's enough resources. And I don't know what you think about what the city might do should you be elected. So I guess I'll just turn that back over to you.
Well done. Very well
That's kind of what
done.
I was thinking. Question with the question,
Yeah,
That's kind of was my thought a little bit there.
Well, I'll give you some ideas once. I've been saying I think the city could do, well, first of all, early childhood is an important part of it. The city can, and Andy's done, I think Mayor Burke's done a good job there, but I think we can do more there. For sure. And I think the city can do a lot of things in terms of social services around using schools as resource hubs. And I think the city could probably do more to, absent finding more money to put towards education directly, which would be great if we can find it. I think the city could do quite a bit more to advocate for the proper funding of schools, because there isn't any single thing, in my opinion, as important to the long-term future of the community.
As I think about just I know that the city, early childhood, there's still not enough funds for every kid
Right.
to have a seat, and
Right.
not enough seats.
Right.
And so, that just is what it is.
Right.
And so, again, resources would help that.
And that to me is the lowest hanging fruit. Particularly in the downtown footprint. I mean, that to me is the biggest no-brainer out there. Money notwithstanding, and so, yeah.
I mean, I'm excited that Montessori is pre-K 3, 4 through
Absolutely.
5th grade, right?
Yep.
And so, and the beauty of that is that multi-aged, and I think you have a couple of schools that way too, but that multi-age group, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, pulling and learning from one another, but it's providing pre-K seats that are needed badly.
No doubt. You have anything to add, Dr. Johnson?
I don't think so. So, I think one example I would use, we were appreciative of the county and the city being engaged with the Wi-Fi, the broadband project in partnership with EPB, and think that was a phenomenal, step. So the county and the city each gave $1.5 million towards that long-term project. And so a few things come to mind. Obviously, I think as we talk about pre-K, so the statistic is only about 2 in 5 of students that enter our district are ready for kindergarten. And what we find is that 2 in 5 number really stays pretty consistent as far as proficiency rates, at 3rd grade. And so, if you take all that and wind it back, you'd like to think that, if you can put a number to 60, 70, and 80% of students being ready when they enter, that your proficiency rates are going to, mirror that in 3rd grade. So obviously pre-K I think is important. I think access, we continue to talk about access. Access is really important. And so I use the Future Ready Institutes as an example. One of our real limitations is providing students access. The beauty of the Future Ready Institutes is students have more ability to connect to the school because our principals, our schools hold a certain number of seats for students out of zone, but we have limited resources in being able to get those students access. And as I use the story of the young man that happened to be in a school that offered the program that was beneficial to him, we've got that situation across the system. And if students can't access it, they can't get to it.
Right.
And then really the third area is technology sustainability. And, when I think about where we are because of COVID-19, we know that technology is, it's always been here, but it's here to stay, and it's necessary. And so thinking about ways in which, just like this Wi-Fi project, we can continue to accelerate, what we have been a leader in as a community with the gig, and some of those things I think is going to be very important to remain on the leading edge. And then, if you got another 2 or 3 hours, I can give you the laundry list of all the other things that that are there. Buildings, counselors, art teachers, and so you've got all those kinds of things. But those 3 areas, I would say, pre-K, access, transportation-wise, and then thinking about technology, how we remain at the leading edge as a community. I think are really important.
That's a good start. That keep us busy for a little while.
start.
You're right. The transportation piece is a big one. There's no point in having the programs that the kids can get there. So I think that is something the city can do. Well, how about best practices? Are there any? I know you've probably been. I know you both stay at the leading edge of best practices around the country. Are there any that you feel that we could adopt locally that you've heard about or run across that you are excited about around the country or around the world?
I'll defer to the guru veteran here to start us off.
Well, and if we are, I mean, to some extent, we are the authors of some of those best practices, right? I mean, if you look at the Wi-Fi project, I mean, I know we've been the envy of many other cities and school systems around the country, and the ability to put that access together. So. And I know y'all stay at the cutting edge, so no is an acceptable answer.
But for us, we always want to get better, and Elaine knows this. if it means beg, borrowing, or stealing from Elaine, or
Yeah.
somebody somewhere else.
Yeah.
For us, it's all about doing that work, and
Yeah.
so we try to stay really apprised to what's happening in other areas.
Yeah.
I had the privilege to be a part of a small network of school districts where, as we were dealing with COVID-19, we had a group from Miami-Dade come in and speak to us, and a group from Baltimore
Yep.
come in and speak. And so in those two communities, Miami-Dade in particular, Florida's a state that, a decade ago adopted legislation and policy that really accelerated access for students and forced districts really to begin to lean into the online work because of some of the legislation. And so, learning from those practitioners as well as, Baltimore and other areas across the country were very influential for us as we start to think about, what the impact of COVID-19, not just in this moment might be, but what might education in the future look like. And so, we always want to stay, really aware of great things that are going on and aren't hesitant about picking up the phone or trying to figure it out. So,
Yeah.
Well, I was raised in public schools, taught in public schools, but as a public charter, superintendent will tell you, if we don't stay on some cutting edge, I'm at CGLA because it was on the list of closure. And so, you, as he said, we must come up with the next best strategy. And I tell you, COVID-19 has caused all of us to lean in and reach and figure out how to teach differently and really and we're still trying to figure it out, but how to be very intentional about the strategies that we give both our teachers and our students, because we don't know when we're going back. Normal is gone.
Right. For
And
sure.
so, every day it's a continual, how do you get better at delivering that instruction, and how do you get better at training teachers to do this type of work?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, what was it, March 12th hit?
Yeah.
And,
Made the same
we
sense.
really had to think about how do we get to that next level. And
Yeah.
I think teachers are doing a great job.
Amazing.
They have the hardest job in the world.
Yeah.
And some of them on their own are bringing cutting edge ideas to us.
That's great.
Right?
I can imagine that's, if I've heard from one person, I've heard from 100. It's like, I now appreciate teachers more than I ever have in my life.
Yep.
The light bulb has been illuminated
Yep.
for a lot of parents on the value of a great teacher and just how difficult that
Well,
job
we're
is.
having to figure out how to keep kids engaged.
Right.
I mean, it's just, I did something crazy on May, gave a fourth quarter benchmark. And I did that to make sure that I kept kids engaged, kept teaching and learning at some respectable level, because, again, on March 13th, things just dramatically changed. And so you had to come up with ideas, not to see so much melt from our students. And so...
Yeah, it's an interesting observation too, because in some ways I think, the core of education, the core challenge for a teacher is engagement. And now, where it's just been really amplified, the problem, right? And that really is the crux of it. And you mentioned before we started the podcast, trying to keep teacher morale up is more difficult than it ever has been, I suppose. Any tips there?
Well, and I think one of the things that I don't want to miss and always try to elevate is it's not just COVID-19 that we're dealing with.
Right.
COVID-19 is one of the issues. We're dealing with racial unrest at a level that it's I won't say that it's never been, but at a more visible level than it's ever been because of social media and some of the platforms that are out there where you see it and it's in your face. And also we're in a very divisive political time.
Yeah.
And so
Tell me about it.
Here we are in a very focused, our core job, I get up every day, Swafford does too, and fortunately we don't have to worry about, the political elements of, red and blue or whatever, and our true focus is on serving all kids, whether you're brown, black, white, red, yellow, green, but that doesn't absolve us from what's happening around us. And so what's happening around us comes into the schools. And if you cut on your TV, every day, all you see is, something about an election, or something about COVID-19, or something about racial unrest, and that's really the three things. I was so happy to see some football this weekend. So, I think people are wearing that as well, and our teachers are wearing that weight as well, and our students are wearing that weight because they're dealing with it in their households, and so it's just enough. The stress level right now,
no doubt,
is at a high, and so it's acknowledging that, and I don't know that there's enough conversation, candid conversation, just about the weight of what everybody's dealing with right now.
I saw something on the internet the other day that said if it was a meme that said if 2020 was a candle and it was a porta potty on fire, and I thought that's about the size of it. I mean, I will be. On the other hand, of course, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, and so we're going to learn a lot out of this one way or the other. I tend to be a glass half full person, so that's what I keep telling myself.
Well, one of the most important things that we can do now in education is, and I tell our teachers, make sure that we're building and keeping those relationships with students, and that's tough to do. You've got your amount that's online, I've got mine, and every system does. But, if you don't have that relationship with kids, even when they're in the classroom, it's hard to have learning take place, right? Because that's the most important thing, to have that relationship. And so right now, we're trying to figure out that social, emotional piece with our students, and our parents, and so that's we can't leave that behind.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and I got one more question, then we'll kind of open it up a little bit and then head towards wrapping up. We've been in here a while, but generally speaking, we think of school as a pedagogical exercise, but I think people are realizing more and more that there's obviously more to it than that, the social and emotional piece of it. Y'all want to talk about that at all? What your thoughts are around that, or how you might approach it, or how you do approach it?
Yeah. So for us, and we've elevated this in the last few budget cycles. The mental health component is a very real situation. Whole child supports are extremely necessary, and just acknowledging it. I always share that, the national data shows that about 1 in 10 high school students contemplate committing suicide, and it's dealing with that head on, right? We can't hide from that. We've got to say that's what it is. Right. About 4 in 10 kids have, one or more identified disorders, and mental health disorders. And so, we've got to make sure that we not just acknowledge it, but then do something about it. And resourcing it is where it gets complex. I always share our data. Our counselor-student ratio was something like 1 to 700. Yeah. And the national standard for counselor-to-student ratios by the counselor ratio was 1 to 250, and now we're at a rate of 1 to 500. And I go in some of our schools that are very at risk students, high economic disadvantaged populations, and 1 to 500 doesn't cut it. No more than it does in a school that doesn't have those economic disadvantage challenges. So, our teens, our middle school students, they're dealing with so much more information, so much quicker than I ever did as a teenager, or a student in school. They're I always say the joke that if I did something ridiculous and a rumor was going to travel about me, I knew I had a couple of days before it got all the way around to get my story together and figure it out how I'm going to, sidestep it. Yeah. I mean, now literally kids have a handful of minutes before it's going viral. Yeah. And that pressure that they deal with is extremely challenging. And so we've got to acknowledge it and then do something about it. And it's not going anywhere because social media and the other platforms and modalities are only going to get better and more sophisticated. Yeah. And so we've got to be thoughtful about it.
No doubt. Got anything to add to that? That's pretty well said. Well, as we wrap it up, I just want to open the floor to, if you got any other questions, anything we might have missed, announcements, closing thoughts, general declarations, anything at all.
I would just re-elevate, the job the teachers are doing.
Yeah.
Every time I get an opportunity to really, really share, our teachers are being asked to do things that, and deal with things that they weren't trained for.
Yes.
and we've given them all of probably 90 days to step in there and take off, and it's amazing what they're doing in the midst of a really, really challenging time. So they're heroes to us as a system, and they should be heroes, seen as heroes in this community.
No question about it. No
Yeah,
question.
it kind of goes back again to they're the people on the front line building the relationships with the students, and this, as a superintendent talked about, this social emotional piece. It's so real.
Yeah.
There are, however, are good stories that comes out of this, and one comes to mind. I had a parent. The student is virtual. And she emailed one of the teachers. This is one of those relationship things. And she emailed one of the teachers and said, this is tough. She says, but I'm a parent who didn't have the opportunity to finish high school. And I'm now getting to sit beside my daughter and learn things
Oh, wow.
I never thought I would get to learn. So, we try to find those little nuggets of the light at the end of the tunnel and the rainbow. And so there are some good things coming out of this, even though it's tough. And like the superintendent said, that teacher, she built that relationship, and so again, there are small wins here.
Yeah, well, that's good stuff. Well, I want to thank y'all so much for joining us, making time. I know you all got some crazy busy schedules. Dr. Swafford, Dr. Johnson, thank you very much for coming. And big thanks for everybody for tuning in. We'll be doing these more on a regular basis, and I'd like to thank Summer Dregs, a local artist, for contributing the music for our podcast. You've been watching Common Purpose. I'm Tim Kelly. Stay healthy and stay hopeful. Chattanooga. Thank you.
Common Purpose is produced by Emily Kate Boyd with the support of the Chattanooga Workshop.